In this brief little tutorial, we're going to show you how to create skies in Photoshop. So I'm going to go ahead and create new, and because we're going to be working on a 1920 by 1080, I want the sky to actually be much bigger than that so it can move from left to the right. So my width here is going to be 4000 and my height is going to be identical 1080. And so by creating an overly large document, this really helps. Now we're going to double click the background and create a new layer with the little plus button here, so you guys can see right here. Now we have a layer, and we're going to just call it sky. And what I'm going to do is fill it with a color. So I'm going to go to my paint bucket tool and click a color that's kind of blue like this, just to start it. And this is going to be my sky. Now in Photoshop, there is a new feature under Edit, and it's called Sky Replacement. So if you've got your sky layer selected here, you can just click Sky Replacement. And that gives you the option of selecting from a lot of different skies, as you can see here. You've got sunsets, you've got regular orange skies, blue skies, you have rainbows. So any sky you pick is going to actually replace that entire thing with that sky. You can modify some of the colors and temperature settings for that sky, make it a little warmer or cooler. Once you're happy and you want to output that to a new layer, hit OK. And what it's done is created this entire folder full of sky. So you can see that's on and off. If you like that sky and you like what's going on here, you can just Command E to crush it down to a single layer. And now you've got your sky that you can use. Now if you just want the clouds, we've done this before, we're going to go to Select Color Range. And you have two choices. You can select the color of the sky, which in this case is blue, and move the fuzziness up so that you get a good amount of blue. And then I'm going to sample here with the Shift key, a little bit here of the darker area, here as well. And what I'm trying to do is keep as much of this white and get rid of as much of the blue as possible, and hit OK. Then if I hit the mask, I see that I have exactly the opposite of what I want. So I'm going to invert the mask, Command I, and that gives me, as you can kind of see, the clouds just from that sky. Now you don't need that. You can always, I'm going to hold the Shift key to disable this mask. You can always just use the sky as is for your background. I will delete all the other layers, the things that I do not want. And I'm going to go ahead and delete the mask layer as well, and just delete it. And so this will be my sky that I'll import into Motion, and we'll know that it will be able to move the sky left to right if that's something that we want to do. Hi guys, for this little segment we're going to talk a little bit about haze, or adding haze, and it's very simple. Once you've got your motion project, you can kind of see I've got my sky brought in here. I've got my waves moving and the boat. This was from our last thing, and you can see that if I turn the 3D overlays off, it's easier to see what's going on here. And here's what we've got. We've got a single light in the scene. If I turn it off, you'll see the entire scene unilluminated there like this. And then this is with that single light that's located right here. So what we want to do is give this a little bit of depth. And one way to do that, very simply, I'm going to go to the camera setup here. I'm going to go back and show the overlays so I can see my camera. If I go to the perspective view, you'll see that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 layers. What we're going to do is create a color solid, and I'm going to do it while I'm in the active camera, and I'm going to show you why. If I create an object here in this view called color solid, you'll notice, well, it actually showed up in the back here, which is great. Okay, well, we're going to work with this. We're going to call this haze, and what I'm going to do is change the color to white, or a little bit gray maybe, just one of the two. And we now have something that's occluding our background, as you can kind of see, and if we bring it forward, it's going to occlude everything. And the idea with haze is that we're going to create a sheet that's semi-transparent. So we're going to go to Properties, and we're going to go to the opacity, and we're going to make this opacity something really low, like 20%, so that we can really see through it. And I'm going to show you this on the active camera view. And you can see without the haze, we can see the sky pretty nicely, but with it, it kind of occludes a little bit of that. Maybe 20 is even a little bit high. Let's try 15. And then what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate this haze, Command D, and bring that forward till it's in front of the first wave. Then we're going to duplicate it again, Command D, and bring that forward until it's in front of the boat and the next wave. And we're going to Command D one more time and bring that forward until it's in front of the other wave. Now when I turn the lights on, you can kind of see that we have something that looks a lot more dimensional, like it's in the fog. We still have all the elements. If I turn the overlays off here so you can kind of see, you can still somewhat see the background, the sky there. But for the most part, we feel like we're in a foggy mist, right? So that's how you actually incorporate haze into a scene. We're just creating sheets of white, in essence, paper, changing the opacity, and using that to give it a sense of depth along with the light. Hope this helps. So in this part of the tutorial, instead of haze, what we're going to be doing is creating something like fog or snow. And because haze was just a sheet of blank, non-moving paper, in essence, that was semi-transparent, we're going to use the same technique, only this time we're going to use motion. We've got our project here. It's 1920 by 1080. You can make the resolution a little bigger if you think you want to, if you need it, but for me, it's going to be fine. I'm just going to hit open so we can show you what's going on here. So we're going to start with the blank canvas as we see here, and this time instead of going to the inspector and adding things, we're actually going to go to the library folder here, and we're going to go to generators. And then down here there's a little search icon. You can kind of see I'm going to make my dock a little bit smaller so it doesn't pop open. And if you type things like fog, I'm sorry, not generators, particle emitters. So we gotta, whatever you're selecting here has to be, the name has to be in it. So if you type something like fog, you're going to see three possible iterations of fog. You're going to see just a regular fog. You should see a preview coming up here, pea soup fog, which looks very dense, and then fog on the floor, which also looks very dense. Let's go ahead and select just the basic fog, and I'm going to drag it into my layers palette, and you notice you get a lot of different things going on, and nothing really happens because we haven't started playing the movie. You'll notice that you have two things that are turned off, called Blur 1 and Blur 11 and Blur 09, and then you've got your actual particle emitter, which is turned on, and it's using these two invisible elements, Blur 0 and Blur 11, and it's actually creating thousands and thousands of them that are actually going to act like, as you can see if I scrub through, act like fog. Now you notice that this fog has a direction, and if I hit the play button, it just kind of goes from right to left. This is an acceptable fog, so I'm going to be just using it by default. I'm going to collapse the group and call it fog, just so you can see what I'm doing here. And what I notice that it starts with no particles or nothing at the beginning here. And then it goes, and then it starts continuing here. And this is where we want the fog to really begin, because we want the fog to be consistent. We don't want it to start every time it loops over and over. So what I'm going to do is kind of drag my fog to the right until it's at a point where it's pretty consistent. And then I'm going to open this fog group up and make it the entire duration of my timeline here. So if I just hit the space bar now, you'll see that it's just playing over and over. I'm going to make sure my 3D views are turned on and render views are on. That's good. Okay. Now this fog is way too small, and what I want to do is increase the size. So I can go to the fog, inside of the fog folder, I can go to the particle emitter, and now go to properties, and I can scale this. So I can go to the scale part, and I'm just going to increase the scale. And the reason why we're doing it, let's just make it a little bit bigger so that it fills up our screen. There we go. So you kind of see that we have a little bit of fog. It gets really dense. It starts on the left. It's kind of intense on the middle. I'm going to open up my fog area and click emitter, and this is where we have some ability to modify the actual fog itself. So I have my birth rate, and if I lower that, I'll have a little bit less fog. So you can see if I bring it down to 57, the fog becomes less dense. That's because it's being born at a lower rate. In other words, those little blur things, there's thousands of them. And I also want to kind of like make it change direction with the emission type. So now it's kind of more kind of sitting there. So you can play with these things. And the nice part about doing it this way So I've got this emission angle going on here. Got some, so you can see it's very dynamic. If I zoom out to 25%, I can open this fog up a little bit more here. There we go. Just so that I have a more consistent. And what I'm trying to do is get this fog ready for export. Let's see. I might want to lower the speed so that it's not so fast. And then finally, lower the birth rate a little bit more. I want a little less density of that fog. Actually, I'm going to undo that. Make it back to 57. Let's see how that looks. And just move it to the right. Now you'll notice the slow and lagging issues, and this is why we're actually not using particle emitters in our motion project. Instead, we're playing with the particle emitters, which is like what we're doing here with this group, inside of motion by itself, so that motion can handle it and play back in real time what we're seeing. So I'm happy with this fog. So now what I'm going to do is share this fog to a movie, and remember, don't have anything selected. So if you have something selected, make sure you uncheck this box. Now this is the important part. We've got to use ProRes 444 or there will not be any transparency, and you need to put color plus alpha. Alpha is transparency. We're going to export this as a QuickTime using these settings right here. You'll notice it's very big, so hopefully you have enough hard drive space. And I'm just going to call this heavy fog. And now it is exporting to our desktop. As you can kind of see, once it's exported, it'll open up and we'll have that fog. Now this fog is nice because we can now use it just like we did with our haze as sheets, and it won't slow the computer down because it's just a video of fog along with transparency, and we can change the opacity and those kinds of things as well, which is really nice. I'm going to turn this fog off because I want to show you some other objects in this particle emitters. There's snow, and you can kind of see there's several different types of snow, but we're going to just use basic snow. And let's take a look at how this looks. I put my playhead here, and I'm just going to move this here and make this bigger so you can see it. So there's this little snow here, which is very nice. There is snow flurry, which I will throw in here. I turn this snow off so we don't have to deal with it any longer. Let's see, I'm going to undo that a couple times because we don't want too much here. So I've got our fog. Let's put snow flurry right here. And notice it puts it like here, and this is like a flurry if you're looking up in the sky. Maybe this is kind of nice. And again, we're going to do the same thing we did with the fog. We don't want it to start at 0, so we're shifting this over until it's pretty consistent. I'm going to zoom out so you can see it, and you can kind of see how at this point it's about this size, and then we're going to open this group up and pull it open so that it takes up our entire timeline. So if you want some snow instead of fog, this is how you would do it. Again, going to the inspector tab under emitter is going to give us the ability to modify some of these snow effects here, and you'll notice how slow this this whole thing is actually going. So we've got our same emission angle, emission longitude, depth order, and again, it's using these two little blur sources, blur 11 and blur 11 twice. It's asking for the size, offset, so you can modify some of these things. I've currently got it in tile arrangement. Watch the particle effects video for Motion 5 that I linked to earlier in class. And once I'm happy with how this snow looks, I think I'm going to maybe make it a little bit bigger, scale it up a little bit. So let's see how that looks. Take a second. There we go. So now the snow, again, it's taking quite a while, and this is why we do not add these particle effects in the motion timeline with the rest of the thing, because it'll in essence bring your entire project to a halt. So I've got my snow here. I go to the share button. I have the other group turned off, so that's nice. And then I'm going to go ahead and share it as a movie. It looks like this. We're going to use the same settings that we used before. Make sure I have nothing selected here. Got that. Alpha is important, and 4444. next, and then snow. Oops, well, that was misspelled. So now I will bring those in exactly like the Haze movie, and you'll be able to use it as a sheet, and it'll look a little bit like this. Okay, so I've gone ahead and put the snow into the scene. As you can see from the perspective, each one of the snows is at a different location in Z-space, and this is what we get, which is really nice. One thing I would suggest is make sure the snow doesn't cast shadows. So again, going to the shadows area for each of these snow panels, go ahead and turn off and cast and receive shadows. Unless you want them, because I think for the most part in space we just want the snow to actually kind of just be there. So this is what the snow will look like. The fog will look very similar to the haze, only with a little bit of motion. And again, you can, if this is too much, you can always change the opacity for each of these sheets. And you can see I've got 4 layers of snow that are slightly offset so that they don't look like they're identical. And this is what you get. I hope this helps. Hope you like it. Thanks.